Well, you know, it is what it is.
All 12 of them well.
Okay, my name is Stacey Wigant. I am one of the 3 Spanish teachers at Van Meter Community Schools, just west of West Des Moines. I just completed my 14th year of teaching. Of the last 14, the last 3 have been in comprehensive input. And my teacher is here in the room, so I am no master by any means, but Miss Melissa Newell joined our district, and she brought the method and she taught me, and I threw everything out the window and embraced it. However, what I'm going to talk about today, shaking up the norm, because I sometimes claim myself a little bit ADD, and I didn't feel sometimes with the students, and my typical schedule, if it's a 5-day week, be like, okay, on Monday we're going to start with some personal question answers and have a few vocab words we're talking about. We're going to lead in with, we'll do some type of a free voluntary reading, and then we'll start a story. And then Tuesday we're going to continue the story, and we're going to circle. And then Wednesday we're going to act the story. And it sounds all great, but suddenly that routine, which is necessary, kids kind of go, oh, we're doing this again. But it's not that they don't want to do it. They like learning. It's too much of the routine where I need to spice it up. I need to shake it up. We need to do something similar but different. And so that, this is just a compilation of my thoughts of when I'm like, I need to spice this up. So some ideas is really what this is. It's not, sometimes they're scaffolded in. When we're doing this, I'll sometimes do this first and then I'll do this. But if you have questions, please chime in. I do have my classroom webpage. It's so that if you want to access anything I have on there, I need to probably clean it up a little bit. Sometimes I keep things and I'm like, oh, that's from like 3 years ago. We haven't accessed it in a while. But you know, it's got our song of the week, etc. Some digital sources I use frequently. First of all, Schoology. It's a free source, and it's the only one that I've found. Even when I play with Google Classroom, I haven't decided that I like it yet. It allows us to upload, for example, audio clips that would be copyright protected that we don't want to infringe on copyright, but allows our students to be able to listen to that piece independently versus to the whole class. And so nobody can access it without an individual code. And it's not something I have out there all the time, it's something that's right there at that moment. And so it's a really good source for my classroom, I feel, because I'm able to use some things without infringing and making it available to the whole public on something that I purchased without violating those pieces. Quizlet.com, I use it a lot. I try and compile vocab lists. Students want to know, what can I study? Go to Quizlet. It's got flashcards, it's got our structures, it's got games. When we finish a test, it's perfect timing to say hop onto Quizlet so that they're still engaged, because if your district is along with all the others, oh, no, it's right. If your district's along with all the others, they will be doing student engagement, measuring that student engagement, and that's the time they walk in is when half the class is testing and there's a quarter of the class that's done, and they're just sitting there quietly reading an individual book and not something to the curriculum. So instead, my school's 1-to-1, they can go on Quizlet, but they can also do it on their cell phones, and 100% of my students have cell phones too. So, edpuzzle.com has become a new favorite of mine. I like to use it with our song of the week. I'll try and show you an example when I get to it. YouTube I use every day. And then QuickTime Audio Player, I'll kind of try and show you a little bit of how it works, but I use it to do screen recordings, accountability, have students practice and listen to themselves speak. Sometimes just a speaking test that's individual that gets submitted, or sometimes I'll have them submit it to Schoology. It's still private. Nobody else can access it but me or them. And it's a place to submit a video without having to bombard my email with 1 million emails from a ton of students. Mm-hmm. So those are just some sources that I kind of reference that if you're not familiar with it, it may be worth looking into. So the first thing I have listed is a video talk, and I went ahead and listed some Spanish 1 words that maybe I would use in this video talk. And I went ahead and put the video up here. I have not used this one specifically. I came across it when I was getting this ready, and I was like, oh, that's cute, I need to use this one. And Facebook sometimes opens up huge venues because people repost things that they don't realize I could use in my classroom. We don't really need sound, it doesn't matter anyway, I don't know if my computer's gonna work that way, but it's a little Harry Potter piece, it's about 1 minute and 34 seconds. And this video is one that I could use in my classroom, especially if you're teaching like Piratas en el Caribe, with the sword, the espada. That's opposite. Okay, so it's a little, you know, harsh, but it's say live on, you know, live on that. Oh. So a video talk that I would use would be maybe this video. And of course I'm showing you in advance of a short little clip. Okay, let's see if I'm cool enough to be able to take it back. Oh, where's my mouse? That's what happens when it goes dual screen. Okay, let me close this. So, let's see here, move it over. With this video talk, what I would probably do is start with these keywords that I pulled out. That's not what I wanted, sorry. Being able to talk about la lengua, un conejo, una espada, salta, corta, cambia. I would try to incorporate these words into conversation pieces, questions I'd ask students first. We wouldn't just go straight to the video. And this would be, for example, in a Spanish 1 class, you could do it in Spanish 2. You could do this video at any level, adding the vocab structures that would fit that level. But an idea of like what I would do to maybe get la lengua and un conejo in a phrase. I would say, okay, so I have a Great Dane. My students know this. And he was a puppy in February. He's still a puppy, but he does not look like a puppy. And I would probably describe the fact that he has the longest tongue in the world. And so I would talk about his lengua. And then I'd ask students to maybe like, you know, talk about his eyes and the nose, and so talk about some other features. But I'd have them like describe Gus, my Great Dane. And so that would be an example of trying to connect with them, something that I have that they can kind of connect with, that would bring those vocab pieces, and that would bring those words in order to make it so they're familiar with them, where they would be able to then describe pieces of the video. And then when I showed the video, I have various ways that I would assess them, whether it would be an actual grade in the gradebook or not. I don't always tell the students. We're standards-based grading, and so sometimes it's just an activity that's reinforcement. But the kids sometimes need to think that it's being assessed, so that way I know that I'm getting their participation. So I have a clipboard with their names, and it helps keep track of their progress. And if I do a whole class assessment, I would show just a little clip, and I'd pause it. And they have to raise their hand to talk. And I'd call on them, and they're only allowed to give one sentence. Okay, now some will give more than one, okay? And then I just put a little mark. And if it's really good, I'll put like a plus. And if they're speaking English, that's like a negative, like that's you don't want a negative. I just do a little mark. I have like a tally sheet, like almost like an attendance sheet, and I just keep a mark next to their name. And they know that they want to try and get as many marks as possible. When I have a really quiet class, I tell them, well, each person should have at least 4 or 5 times that they've communicated. Like, you have to raise your hand. And if I always have Melissa who raises her hand every single time, I don't always call on her right away. I call on some others, and then I call on her. And then she's like, oh, they took the good ones. But she'll still have something to share because she's one that always wants to participate, and it pushes her outside of the box, and it allows those quiet ones to still get in. So I kind of rotate who I call on, and I make sure that if it's somebody who's not been marked yet, they get first dibs. And when it's almost the end of class, and I'll point out that I have some people that don't have a lifeline yet, they're like, we've tried to save them in the emergency room, and they're still dead because there's no pulse. All of a sudden their hand will raise, they'll participate. I'm like, we at least have a pulse, guys. And you know, everyone knows I kind of pointed them out, but it kept us going. Sometimes I do it individually. or with a partner. With a partner, we will have gone over those words and we'll either have watched it as a class and I will have talked through the description and asked questions, and the students just answered yes, no, etc. So I've kind of described it and then they get a practice. And sometimes they have to then use that QuickTime audio player. And because my thing's doing a dual screen thing, I don't know if I'm gonna be as cool to be able to show you. But if you have a Mac, I don't know how it works on a PC. If you go to QuickTime audio player and it opens, there's a box at the top. And when you click on, just a second, I'll see if I can find it here. There's an area where if you click on it, you can do a screen recording. And it will videotape what's only on the screen, so it's not videotaping the student's face. It's videotaping the screen that they're watching, and it's recording what they say. And they can pause the video as much as they want. When it's done, they stop the recording, and they send you the video. So it'll have their mistakes in there. I just tell them I don't care if there's mistakes, I just want to hear you speak. But when you open, of course my computer's going to do the spinny thing. They re-imaged it a week and a half ago, and I haven't opened some files that it of course takes a little bit. But when you open QuickTime, it'll do it. It's going to open for me or not. But when you open it, there's at the top there's a thing that'll say screen record. And you just click screen record, and you hit record, and you just have to make sure your microphone's on. I've had students go through the whole thing, and their microphone wasn't clicked as being on. That's a little trick that I learned. But that's one of the favorites that I like to use as a method of, my mouse is over here, as a method of sharing, and now I've just frozen my computer. This will go lovely. Sometimes day one might be students raising their hand to speak. Day two, we'll play the video, pause, have a clipboard. I'll be marking who talks. Day three might be followed up with a video write, where I'll have them practice writing out what they see in the video. And it just has them practicing if they're not ready for that individual production. Sometimes we skip certain things. I'm so mad now because my computer has like completely frozen. And
Can you get it online?
I'm gonna try and go a different
I have
route.
a mouse too, if you want to try a mouse.
Yeah, just a second here. I think it's because my computer's trying to do this dual thing, like where it goes dual screen. And I think that's what my problem is. So I'm gonna try going a different route, and instead of showing my page, I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna do it from. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so individually or paired, if it's paired with that popcorn talk, one person shares, another person says something, one person, and they can go back and catch each other up. So just different ways of practicing speaking. Like I said, individual, I'll have students go and re-watch the video and write what they see. Often they describe things we don't talk about in class. I have them tell what they are thinking, what they want, etc. It's not always an assessment, it's the practice. So it's not always going in the grade book, but sometimes the kids have to think it's gonna go in the grade book. They never know what I'm going to actually put in the grade book, because if they don't think it's ever going in there, I have some that won't do anything and then I'm on them. And this way, it allows them to practice. And Mrs. Melissa and I have found that if we give them a rubric after they've done something that's recorded, speaking or writing, and have them go through and self-assess, sometimes it helps bring home what we're actually looking for to help enhance that piece too. So, telling a story, step number one, tell a story with these words. And so, I might have a list of words like, what's up here, había bailado, había practicado, había escuchado, pensaba que. So these might be some words that we have in a story that, you know, had danced, had practiced, had listened. And perhaps individually, each student has a team that creates their own story after having a class story model. So my class story might be, there was a boy that was named Enrique, he had a problem, He wanted to study at Harvard, he wanted to be a doctor. It was a big problem. The problem was that he didn't have money. He had danced with music. Doctor, give me the news. Okay. He had listened to them or listened to a lot of other doctors. He had also practiced being a doctor with his stuffed animals, but he had no money. He thought that his mom was rich. He wanted his mother to give him money to go to Harvard. So one day he went up to his mother and said, "Mom, I have practiced, I have listened," etc. Okay, so it goes through practice is both present perfect and past perfect in just a little bit. Okay, and that might be our class story that I circle and we kind of practice. That's my story I gave them. They don't have to have it memorized. They're that listening point. They're grasping, and then I give them the key words and say, now as a team, we need to come up with a story, and I want you to have a problem, and we need to have a conversation. They need to be able to say where they go or what they do to help resolve the problem. You have to have a resolution of some sort. Usually they end up dying of some tragic death, but it still had a resolution. And so that extra practice, they don't always want to just listen to just me constantly every single day or every single moment. They need that practice and then bring them back to me. Sometimes we'll create a parallel character. So I've had that story, and now their turn is to create a friend, or the mom. What's the mom's problem now? Okay, the mom now has no money. The mom was left with nothing, whatever. And so they will create a parallel, or maybe it'll be a parallel story based off of the video talk we had. And there's a character that we pulled out, and now they have to tell what happened here. One of the favorites that Melissa taught me started with, and I think that I'm going to give credit to Martina Beck's, with running dictation, and she has a description of that. I've seen it in lots of different ways, but this is an activity to throw in that forces repetition of listening, writing, and comprehension over what they've been learning in different ways. And how I was taught was you have your story spaced out with sentences, and as a teacher I'm in one area and you're in teams, and you each are in teams of maybe 3 or 4, and never do more than 4. And one person's the writer, one person's the runner, and one person's the translator, helper, decipherer. But those roles change. So for question number 1, that's who those jobs are. And then question number 2, the next person's the writer, the next person's the runner. And so for question number 1, all the teams are going to send person number 1 up, and I let them start at the same place. So everyone has a runner that's standing in front of me, and I give them question number 1. And I'll read Abia un chico, que se llamaba Enrique, and I'll say it as many times as they need it, quietly, so their other team members don't hear me. They have to run back, tell their team what they heard. The person's writing, they're checking to make sure that's how you say it, and it's okay if there's errors. I'm not looking for those mistakes will iron themselves out. And then when they're ready for question number 2, the next runner comes up and they have to go like this. And so sometimes 1 has come back to me 2 or 3 times. So I'm still doing that, and then I'm moving on to question number 2, and I have them listed. And I don't usually have 19, which is what I have here. I usually have, it kind of depends on the class, but I'll have like 10 there. My goal is to try and get through 5 of them, or how much ever my time allotted is. That's one method of running dictation that we've done, but then this last year I've changed it up, I've spiced it up. And I've done a reading dictation. And I put it out in the hallway. I'm not even reading it. I have to take away all cell phones when this happens. It can't even be when they come up to me. And I have to usually stand and monitor both sides, because cheating happens. And cheating happens where, just gonna steal the paper, nobody else can get it, okay. It's to that level cheating, and it's kind of funny, but you gotta watch them, and I usually have to go over the ground rules, and they're like, oh man. But I take usually their cell phones. I take them. Everybody has to put their cell phone there. If you're caught with their cell phone, you don't get it back. And I'm like, oh. And because otherwise they're screenshotting, etc. But then they're running and they're relaying what they read. When it's a part of a book, where the book is fizzling, and we need to get through a chapter, and we've given them a test. So sometimes I'll use 1 chapter as a reading test, because you've got to keep them moving in some novels. 1 chapter is a listening test. Well, we've read most of the chapter, we've got a little bit left. I've typed up that 1 page of a chapter from the book, and I have put sentences with it. They're translating, they're reading, they're dictating the chapter, the part of the chapter they've read, and they don't even look at it as reading, they look at it as they're practicing their Spanish, it's a game. And so, that's one way. And then of course, the first group, they get it done, and they have to also put English translation in there, so they're writing Spanish and English. And I don't care if it's perfect, it needs to do you understand what it's saying? I usually have leftover Halloween candy, Christmas candy. I never buy anything, it's what because I have children, it's what they have leftover, after the first day of candy, it gets put up, and my kids don't usually eat it anyway. I know it sounds strange, but mine don't. I bring it to school, and so they get dum-dums and whatnot, yeah.
The students is write it down in the target language or is it translation?
It's in the target language first,
Target language.
and then they do have to go through and do the translation too.
Okay.
So a lot of times we do the translation and the target language, so it's both. I wanna know that they get what they're reading,
Okay.
but it's also forcing them to read it and forcing them to look at how to write it.
Okay.
And then I'll even have them, when they're all done, they can take their page up and compare, see what spelling errors they have. And usually there's that one kid that can't spell anything, and they're like, dude, I told you, I can't spell! And so they're trying to fix it according to what they read. So double rechecking before they turn it in. And you've got groups still fighting to get out there. I usually set up 3 pages, so that way it gives them a little bit of space to check. So yeah, and I'll just tape it to the brick wall or tape it to the pillar. And then I have to be careful because if you do, I found this out. I did the same story for a Spanish 2 class. That was like 2nd hour Spanish 2 and then 4th hour. One of the kids, 2nd hour, saw it out there, took a screenshot and like memorized the story. So good thing I was smart. I gave that group a whole different page. So sometimes it's good to maybe have like a little bit of a change up because some of the nicks in the school will be smart and try and bypass the system.
But you still win because he like memorized the whole thing.
I know.
Hashtag winning right there.
I know, exactly. So, yeah, basically I've tried to change up what the running dictation is. And it can't always be the same way, and that's not something we can do all the time. It's kind of that, okay, we're gonna do this one, and we're like, oh yes, it's a game. But really it's just to make them read, or make them listen, or it's just a different way to do it. The other one that I've done that was pure chaos, and I had even my struggling runners love it, was instead of having the 3 sit as a team and 1 person run up, it's almost like a relay race, and the final person, that's your translator, is the last person here, and so they're all lined up, and then the next set of tables is the writer in Spanish, and the next set is the person standing here to get the sentence that's given to them from the wall that has to run, and it's telephone. And they have to tell this person, and this person has to pass the paper back, and then this person, and then once that person's there, then they have to, I've had them shout a phrase, they have to wave a red flag, or, they've got flag colors they have to wave, and then that person knows they have to go get the next sentence. And so, then it's like relay races, and then they rotate, and the back person comes up to the front, and they each switch places. So I've done it where they have to do 2 sentences before they switch, or whatever. That one's kind of fun too. And that one I give them more than 5, I usually give them like a good chunk. And it's funny, the ones that struggle, the ones that get it are actually getting it in both Spanish and English when they read it. They're reading it and like, I know what that says, and they don't even have to go back out there because they knew what it said. It's the ones that really need the repetition. And so they'll go to this middle guy and they'll be like, avión chico, okay, and the person's like, se llama? I don't remember. Avión chico. So this person goes over and tells that person, avión chico. This person's back running out. Avión chico, que se llamaba. Okay, avión chico, que se llamaba. I told you that's what it was. They're like arguing about it. But this person's getting that repetition over and over and over. And then even when they're here, they're getting that repetition, and it's funny because they're just short sentences. I can only handle short sentences. But they're still having to read it that many times. So,
Can I piggyback on that?
yes, please, chime in.
I
My partner.
really like the running dictation. I don't do it very much because I don't deal crazy.
See, and I'm ADD, so I deal crazy.
But one thing that when I did do it, I would record it so that they could go up and listen to the piece that they needed to hear as many times as they needed to and then run, so that I could do more monitoring.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And that
I've
really
done
helped with the chaos. And so I can't remember, I think I just picked a PowerPoint slide and recorded my voice, and it's like, there's an icon in there that
even in like Schoology.
Yeah,
Or you could have it on your computer and they have to go up and listen, or they each have 3 computers open.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So that helps with the chaos.
I've never done listening, I've only ever done this reading, and with
Mhm.
different sentences, like 10 different ones around the whole hallway, so they have to find this sentence and then find that one, I like listening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so listening, reading, I like the idea of piecing together. If it's part of a novel, they know part of what's already happened in the story.
Put 'em in
They have
order,
to
yeah.
find what happened when. So, yeah, I mean, it basically, there's tons of ways to shake it up, and sometimes that's what we need, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking I have a lot of native speaking friends, and instead of them hearing my voice and my accent all the time,
Yeah.
that shake them up and scare them to death probably.
It's good for them, they need to hear it. And then you have to tell your native speaking friends, because I have a couple that one of them, he works in the business world, and he's like, do you want me to speak to you in my English Spanish, or my American Spanish, or my Mexican Spanish? And I'm like, I don't know, and he's like, and so he'll speak to me in his Mexican Spanish, and I'm like, what? And he goes, exactly. And so then he'll speak in his American Spanish, and it's because it's the Castilian, like what we've learned, and, and then he'll speak as, and then he'll try and mix them a little, but, so it's kinda like, which one do you have them do? But, yeah, so, hall races, running dictation with the listening, the telephone, the line dictation. So I have a group that I use Kahoot. I was familiar with it. I heard of it when I did traditional method teaching, very beneficial. I had used it a couple times with regular teaching, but with this method, but where I found that it was really beneficial this year is I had a group of boys specifically that hate reading. Our administrator's son was one of them. And he was fine if we were sitting there reading as a class. People had to rotate as long as you didn't call on him, okay? But if he had to read something independently to himself, he wouldn't do it. And so when I played the Kahoot game, I was like, oh my gosh, he can read, he can do this. I handed each kid the book, and I had to write down on a piece of paper which questions went to which set of slides that go to the Kahoot questions. And I'd be like, okay, so this page goes to these questions. And so I would have them read. I want you to read this page. You have to read this page first. And I'd sit there and read it to myself, okay, so an independent, quiet reading. Then we'd start the game. And they can reference if they have to. Well, you want to make sure you read it because you want to be the fastest person to push the button so you get the most points. He was bound and determined he was going to beat everybody because it gave you who had the correct answer with the fastest push, but you had to read it to be able to answer the questions. And the questions I had are always in English because the reading is what I want them to be able to do. And if they're so focused trying to translate the question, the comprehension of the reading lost its value. And so, yeah, it totally engaged him, which then engaged all of his friends that hate reading, and totally engaged. It's not something I could do every day, but it's something that I've done, and I've also used it to review before we have the final test. Like for semester tests, I did it for over a novel. We had the very last 2 chapters were part of our semester test. We do it in both spring or winter and spring semester tests, and the final 2 chapters or final 3 chapters, depending on how long they are the reading tests and the listening test. And so prior to that, to make sure that they're getting some of the details, they now have to go back and reread parts of previous chapters and make sure they understand what happened, and then there's questions to make sure they get it, and yeah. So they like the competitiveness and the fastest finger correction, etc. So Melissa introduced me to story cubes, the Rory story cubes, and she found them at like Target one summer. So I'm like, oh, that's a fascinating idea because they're all pictures on these dice. And so I went on Amazon and I ordered myself a set, and I have all 3 is what I ordered. They've got different storylines on them. And I use them for different things. I don't use them constantly. I use it to shake up the norm. And sometimes we're telling a story and we have a key set of vocab. And I will use them in small group or whole group or individual. Whenever I dig them out, my upper level students especially are like, oh yay, we get to use the cubes today. And if it's the whole class, I'll like take 3 or, I'll take 3 and be like, hey, you can roll of the 9 that are there. And we're to a point in the story where we're storytelling, because in upper level you don't storytell as often, so to keep them engaged. pick one of the dice of something that's gonna happen, and they have to look at it and go, okay guys, we got this, or this, and then the class helps give ideas based off of what they had, and we help tell the story with that. Sometimes it's when they're doing individual stories in small group or individual. And what I do then is I only have 3 sets with different story cubes. I go around and I give each group or each person their set of dice. They roll it, they take a screenshot on their phone of what roll they get. Pass the dice to the next person, and then they can start categorizing their ideas of what they're gonna put into a story with certain structures. So each person, it's like as if I had a class set, but really I only have 3. It's just the pass the dice. So while they're waiting to get their dice, they're organizing other pieces of their story. And then when they get their picture of their dice, and then have it on their phone so they don't lose it. It goes faster, obviously, if you have a team of 3. I don't really like to do teams of 4 because there's always that person that doesn't do anything. But in a team of 3, usually you can get 3 workers. And then I also like to use them in stations. I like to do stations. Our district used to do a modified block schedule where we had traditional 45 minutes, a 90-minute day, a no class day, a 45-minute day, a 30-minute day, like just crazy. And that 90-minute day was a tough day, trying to get through. And so stations is what got me through it. I found now, because we don't do a 90-minute day, and I'm appreciative of it, I really don't care for a 90-minute day, but sometimes with stations, I have to do 2 days worth of stations then. So my stations are set up, usually 4 stations or 5 stations, so I can get 25 kids through, or it's 2 sets of the same station. And 1 station will be Rory cubes and Rory story cubes. And they only are given 12 minutes of that station, so if I do a repeat the next day, they get then 24 minutes. But then the other two or 3 activities I have lined up need to be able to be done in a 24-minute period. You don't want them done in 10 minutes and then never go back to it. So I have to be creative in what I set up as stations. But Rory cubes have been a favorite. I talked about stations just a little bit ago. Rory cubes is one of them that I'll set up. I'll do listening with Song of the Week, a story or a reading, where it's recorded, or Song of the Week's on YouTube. And they'll have a worksheet that they're filling in and listening to. They're counting what words they hear, and then they're going back through and double checking their answers. Those are usually what it looks like when it's Song of the Week. If it's a story that they've done, there's questions, almost like an assessment, a test, but it's for practice. And so they're listening with their own earphones. Sometimes it's a small group and it's just one computer playing it for the whole group. I make it a game when it's listening for a Song of the Week oftentimes if they're listening for certain keywords. And they're marking what they hear, and then they compare with their whole team. And then they double check and see, well, how many times did you hear that key structure? Filming, I'll set up props in the hallway just outside my door. So I'm like watching the whole class and then the door. And usually they have their computer or their cell phone, and they have either a story script that they just have to be able to show. They've never seen it before, they have to be able to show their understanding of it. Or they have to act out some story that's, here's the first part of the story, you have to retell the second part of the story. And there's no writing with it, it's all just verbal and it's a short bit. With writing, I said story cubes, reading. So I'll take a cultural piece from a text. We try and find only novels that we're gonna use for teaching that come with the teacher's guides, because those people that have created those, Martina Bex, Carol Gabb, Christy Toff, have done an excellent job at creating teachers' references, and even though they're pricey, our district has been very generous and liberal to us and making sure we have those resources. And they usually come with, good ones come with really good rich cultural pieces you can add in, and there's not always time in a unit and to keep the students going, but that's where I'll plug those cultural pieces in, and they're reading something that's in Spanish about a cultural piece, and then they're discussing and collaborating and having to do some research on their computer as one of the stations. Sometimes they have to read a section of the novel and they have questions they have to answer. So just, a lot of times kids are excited when they come in and they see that stations are set up because they know they're not doing something for 45 minutes, they're doing something for 12 minutes. And then they're rotating, and it makes time go faster, and yet they're still learning. Oftentimes I try and start each day with some personal question answers. Melissa and I with our upper level, started coming up with a high-end question that we would focus on for 3 or 4 days that week, or sometimes 2 weeks worth, that same question, but it was only a 4-minute clip of that class. It's just at the beginning, and we started with where we had them write it down. They read the question the first day and they wrote down their answer, and then they handed in their slips. And it's okay that it's not memorized, but they were able to kind of process it. And then we asked the question, and then circling, oh, so do you like this? And you're able to go into further detail, and maybe you only talk to 2 students that day, and the rest of the class is listening. But then it's almost like a personal interview, because after a week, students then can go through and they can talk about what other people said, or they can write out, you even have to do a 5-minute write about the personal interviews of that team question. So like I said, sometimes one topic lasted a whole week, but we were able to circle the same structure.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yes, please.
One thing that I did that the kids really liked is I took it and, like, if you were stuck in the woods for 3 weeks, what would you bring with you? That was the question. And it's only upper level if you tell them it's upper level.
Mhm.
They won't know, because they're gonna hear it over and over and over. So they write down their thing, and then I collect it, and so my form, because I'm not really great at circling and keeping them engaged, and so what I did was ask them, who do you think? Who wrote? I would bring blah, 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 and then they guess, they get three guesses, and then we're also using an internado, and I took phrases from that, and one of the phrases was, has dado el clavo, you nailed it. Eso me sirve, pero, no, eso me sirve, pero no lo escribí. That would work for me, but it's not what I write, what I wrote. And then, eso no me sirve para nada. So that's not useful for me at all. And there was one more I put up there, I can't remember what it was. So the person they ask has to answer with one of those 3 responses. If they get it incorrect, somebody else can guess. After I repeat the question again, or their answer again. So I'm repeating it several times, and then if they don't get it, then I reveal who it is. And we do 2, they beg to do more, and I always fall into the trap of, okay, well, and then we end up doing 3 or 4, which you can't do because then you don't have it, for longer.
And it doesn't get the repetition the
Right?
next day,
And
because
they
that's
get
the
bored
problem.
too. They get
The-
bored.
Do you give them a limit
So-
of how many things they can bring?
I just said one thing for that
You
one,
can
but
only bring
each,
one thing. Oh, it was
every-
interesting,
yeah.
the things that they said. It
One
was
said-
an enlightening conversation.
it was funny.
What was your question?
If you were, because one of the, metido en el bosque was one of the words from
Yeah,
el
yeah.
internado. If you were stuck in the woods for 3 weeks, what would you bring? Okay, and so after each day I do 2 people, I draw it out of the bucket, they get to guess who it is. After, it usually takes 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, my goal was always 2 and I didn't, but write the answers of all the people with a question on the top and have them fill in who said that they would bring what, so it connects in the end, And then you move on to the next, topic, the next question, but that question was the most engaging question. However, I wrote other questions not engaging at all, so I threw that one out completely and just did a new one the next day. And they'll tell you, that's dumb.
You can read their facial expressions.
So that made it more.
But if you only spend no more than 5 minutes, at most 8, but very short amount of time, and you do that 5 days in a row versus one whole class you
Right.
spent 20
Yeah,
minutes
don't
on.
fall into the trap, because they'll beg. And we do, no, just one more, and then you wanna have the
Manana,
repetition each day,
manana.
yeah.
So, I have found with my classes last year, I used a lot, year before that I used a lot, and they would beg for it. There are these cubes of cards that are table topics, they're in English, and they have conversation pieces kind of like if you were stuck in the woods, what would you do? And obviously you have to put them into Spanish, and there's varying levels of questions, but like she said, if you don't tell them it's high level, they don't know it's high level, it's just a question. Some questions that I used, that I made. If our government knew that there was a mortal virus that had entered our country, should they tell the public, or should they keep it quiet to control the panic? That question in my Spanish 4 class last year was interesting, because they'd seen Ebola, they've seen the Zika virus, what's people have reacted to. And so, that's an example question similar to what she said, where I was trying to find more engaging topics. where, if I might lose them, and also trying to hit the supiera and the. Another one, si fuera, if you were a doctor and you were the only doctor that could help, would you help someone that had hurt your family or a friend who, like, would you actually do it? Those types of questions. And have them turn to each other, circle question, try and drive in a little deeper. And then of course I'd have like, if I was a doctor, and I was the only doctor, I would, and we kind of start the sentence off for them. So that way they have an idea of how to do a complete sentence instead of see, no, to go deeper. So, so table topics, they've got like tons, they have them for teens, they have them, they've got a lot of them.
Where did you say those were?
I got them on Amazon,
They're
table
English,
topics.
right?
And they're in English,
Oh,
and you just have to
okay.
put it in
That is
Spanish. So, they're all in English, so I have to go through and like pull out which ones did we do last year, or, so I try and put them at the back.
I think there are little cube things that have like just clear windows, and
Yep.
I think you can make your own like little, so you have to come up with your topics on your own, but there's these little cube things that are kind of soft and stuff, so you can like toss
Oh,
them and.
Yeah,
I don't know what they are, but.
Remember the ones that we can write on?
Yeah.
We could write those on there too, and then toss it, and then they would. And I've seen it also where you can buy the cheap beach balls, and obviously after you use it, it'd be gone, but on each strip, you could have a question. So when they got it, whatever was facing them, that's the question that they have to be able to answer. And if you did
Yeah,
that
I
for
would
like,
tell them where their thumb was, and if their thumb was on 2 different ones, I would say, choose one, pick one.
Yep.
So,
and that would also be an engaging topic, and then somebody has to ask them a question about it. So, for our Spanish 3 and 4, we started using El Internado. We did see on the IFLT CI webpage, Facebook page, that somebody posted they saw that Netflix is going to be pulling it. So then of course it will be, buying it if Netflix doesn't decide to renew. A lot of people were filing complaints trying to get them to keep it. But the big thing that we found is you have to go slow. You can't fly through an episode because they're just watching it to watch it, and they're not watching it to understand what they're watching. And we might go several weeks before they get to see the next 5 to 10 minute clip. Mike Pito has excellent resources on Teachers Pay Teachers. We watch it with the Spanish subtitles because then they're getting reading too, and the listening. And I'll have students ask, so what does that mean? Now hopefully they don't pick out the swear words that we just kind of ignore. We just ignore them, and the kids don't notice them either. They focus on the parts that we've been focusing on in class.
They know it.
They notice, but they don't make a big deal about it. As long as you don't pause it right when there's a swear word on the screen, mine ignore it.
Yeah.
one thing we discovered too in using El Internado, and I struggled with it at first, but Stacy really eased me into it. It lines up really well with La Calaca Alegre. And so we used each chapter of La Calaca Alegre to assess. We did have to go through and pick out some structures from that book and put into the stories that we would create. But it really did line up well, and honestly, if they're in level 3 or 4, they can read that book fairly well. And it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't have to line up completely, because you're just assessing, we did listening, so we recorded it and had them listen and answer questions in English. And then we also did reading, where they would read a chapter and answer the questions in English. And that lined up really
For
well.
our semester test, and we said next year we're gonna do things a little different, but we just took screenshots, not all of them. They never knew what they were gonna get, if it was gonna be an Internado screenshot, or if it was gonna be a story of a storyboard. But, we took screenshots from El Internado and put them on, Melissa did that for us. Put them on a sheet of scenes, and they had to be able to tell, and they could ad-lib things that happen. But, one of the things we said we could do, you could do it as a video talk, which would be very influential. Where you watch it with the sound off, the subtitles off, you watch the scene, and they describe what they see before even what they're watching to figure out what's happening, to understand that other part. So, lots of ways that you could use it. Yeah.
Is the content really pretty mature? Is that why you use it in
Yes, I would not show it in Spanish 1 and 2, it's very mature content.
Some teachers do,
Some
however,
teachers
I think
do.
you can edit it, if you
You know,
use.
we
What
don't
is it
show
that we
certain
use?
scenes, like anything that has innuendo to the bedroom scene, we just skip over those scenes. We don't even show it to them, because we're only showing a small little clip. So it takes us a long time to get through one episode that's like an hour and a half. Yeah.
Is there a program, I heard about a program where they'll slow down the speech of whatever you're watching.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. YouTube.
I don't, but here's my question to you, and I know it's like fast when they watch native speaking, but if obviously our goal is to make things comprehensible, but if we are slowing down speech of native speakers, then it's not an authentic resource.
And what I do is I show that 5-minute clip 3 or 4 times.
And over,
And they have the subtitles, and so the first time they're not gonna, the second time, yes, the third time, and they'll start catching more each time, so you have enough time to do that if you only do 5 minutes at a time.
And then that ed puzzle I talked about, some people have some illegal, kind of poor grainy pictures of edited Internavo and on YouTube that sometimes get yanked, but you can usually pull it from somebody else's work, and you can add questions, and you can quiz them through listening and watching, and so we've done that too. It's not usually a huge assessment piece. But Song of the Week, we do counting of structures, close activities with the fill in the blank. We usually do one song for about 2 weeks because we don't always hit it every single day. And when you do it for 2 weeks, they know the words by the second week. I talked about Ed Puzzle, I love this source. There's no username required if they have a Google email. They literally click login, it gives your Google email, they click on Google, it has their school email address, logs them right in. They just have to add your class code and they're in, and then you can upload video sources, make quizzes. We found that if it's multiple choice, it checks it all 100%. You don't have to go through each individual student. If you do fill in the blank, it is more a deeper checking and understanding, and but you do have to click on each student then.
You use that for assessment.
Or sometimes like we finish one test and I need them to be doing something that is engaging, or that's individual. Talked about creating stories with structures. Draw what you hear, retell. That one's kind of a basic one, but it's always one that's a good one to throw in. You've read this story, I want you to retell what you have based off of pictures you've drawn. And then at the end of the year, I'm trying to wrap this up really quick because this is supposed to be done here. I did an activity with Legos that I got from a PLC group from an elementary classroom. It was a STEM activity. I brought in Legos. I gave them literally like 15 minutes to build a structure. They had so much time to come up with a story. It wasn't very long. They could not write it. And then they had to tell the story and videotape it. I had them upload their video to Schoology, and then they had to try and guess what the structures were that were used in the story and what they meant. I even had them do where they had to use a different way to express that structure without saying that word, and they had to try and figure out what that structure was, and it was a really good listening activity. The kids loved it. It was Lego Day. The last few slides I have, mingles, where there's a sheet of paper. Oh wait, before I switch the scene.
I'm going to tweet this.
I did tweet it. The example of a mingle, I think Melissa created this document here. I'll have them sometimes do it just as a small group, have it do it as a whole class. I'll have them walk around. Sometimes I'll do concentric circles where they're standing with their backs to each other in a circle and there's an outside circle, and I'll tell them when to rotate. Sometimes it's speed dating where they're all in a line and you have to tell them to move. I have to change it up because if you do the same thing, then suddenly the monotony's gone. What did you do last weekend? Did you go to church? Did you study? No, I did not study. No, I didn't. Yes, I went to church. Oh, what time did you go to church? They have to ask those extra questions. But the visual is there. The question is there for them. There's no question on how to say it. Everybody can participate, but the more repetition they get, the more it enforces what those words are. And I didn't have to teach them what church was. They saw it multiple weeks in a row on a Monday. And even simple things like bingo. Give them a bingo sheet, give them the English, give them a list of your structures, have them write them in. English and Spanish, back and forth. Oh, I had in English but not in Spanish. They had a choice of what to write. They didn't know what I was going to say. They had to listen back and forth. Melissa had brought up back an activity I totally forgot about. Memory, where you have sentences with English and Spanish. They're flipped over, they have to find their matches. I mean, it sounds simple, it sounds, but it's one of those things where it changes it up, it gives them a game and it gives them something applicable that's in their hands.
Especially if it's the story that you're working on.
We've done it with Elena now though,
Yeah.
and she did it with pictures even, like she did the picture in the sentence. So, yeah, last one was, box ball. Have a soft ball, have a box, it's like trash ball, but I can't stand the germs, so it's a box. And there's questions, whether it's like bingo style, whether it's, we're reading a novel, they have to ask, I ask questions just like Kahoot did. After 3 or 4 questions, they get that many shots for how many points they got. So I have to wait though, if you do a shot after each time, you'll never get through all your questions, you have to wait. So, yeah, that's it. If you have questions, let me know. Melissa's also a great asset, I'm glad she joined us because, yeah, this is just, these are just some simple things that I brainstormed. Make sure you join the Facebook group, IFLT NTPRS CI Teaching. And we also have a local one that I created over a year ago that's teaching CI in the Heartland. Just to be able to share ideas, ask questions, get support from each other. It's the best way to network. And a lot of the ideas that were on here were stolen from other people. Martina Bex, great people that I've changed, and so I'm not taking credit for anything as my own. So, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I stopped it.
If it's somebody
You have to
else
stop on
that's
this.
still
Oh, it's still linking red?
Yep.
Okay, can you get it?